Hello, hello, everybody. This is Angel Arts, and welcome back to yet another episode of Let's Interview the candidates for the upcoming Wizarding World of Harry Potter tabletop campaign. We are here with our next finalist, Chris. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Hart. Hello, Logan.
And like he just said, we have a guest interviewer, Logan,
Hello.
also known as Lucky Jack. You may know him from such campaigns as the Dragon Age Intervention campaign, which was the original. He is the OG, one of the OG people.
I have never had OG being used to describe me in any context. I'll accept it here.
Thanks for coming back and helping us with this, Lucky Jack. Cool. So, without further ado, I am just going to step back and let Lucky Jack run the show here.
Okay. So, it's nice to meet you, Chris. So, I looked over the audition. Definitely, I was interested in going with your selection for using a vampire as a character. I honestly don't see, at least with what the experience I had with Harry Potter up until now, I don't think I'd seen a lot of like vampire characters, although I can only assume they do exist in that world. So having this sort of like window to kind of perhaps see how their communities and circles would work would be interesting to me. Though that being said, since vampires haven't typically been seen a lot in Harry Potter, I was curious, what sort of inspiration did you draw for your perception of how vampires would work in, say, the Wizarding World?
I took a little bit of the mythology behind most vampires, not exactly considered good people, not exactly, liked by general society. And then in the character section, which you can find them, it actually has a bit of lore on their society. They're actually pretty honorable and very, very willing to help people such as the Auroras, who go out and hunt down rogue vampires, which are what 90% of people know of as being a vampire. For the society, I also kind of see them as a close-knit group just because small community, so that's part of how I see them. Nocturnal. Definitely nocturnal, despite the fact that not all of them have that weakness. In fact, Norio doesn't.
Oh, so he is not susceptible to sun.
Nope.
Okay. Then, all right. Makes sense. Okay. My next question would be kind of a more straightforward one. If there was, if we assume a generic Dungeon and Dragon team to be like, the leader, the warrior type, a healer, a rogue, what sort of role would you see yourself as in that sort of team dynamic?
Probably a mix between emotional support and leader, because me as a person, I've gone through ROTC, which trains you to be something of a leader. So that's kind of something that I would personally bring in. But also, I'm more of a wallflower than getting in there all the time on a personal level.
Assuming you have had experience with it before, what is your favorite character from Harry Potter? Anything J.K. Rowling-esque?
Probably the Weasley twins.
Fred and George? Yeah, those are fun.
They were kind of comedic characters, and generally they're all right to me, but these ones I felt were really well done because they could get serious when it had to be, but also they weren't defined by just being, oh, we're always serious, or we're always this, or we're always that. They could move back and forth, and they had a lot of good times.
Chris, one of the things that I'm looking for from the people that I select into the campaign is I'm looking for people who are able to help me flesh out a lot of the holes in the lore that exists right now, especially for the international schools. and the countries that they're affiliated with. So my question for you is, for Makoho Toro, what do you imagine the school to be like that's different from Hogwarts or Ilvermorny? And culturally, in Asian or Japanese culture in the wizarding world, how do you imagine that to be different from the UK wizarding world or the American wizarding world?
As a starter, it would probably be a lot stricter of a school system. I don't know if you know anything about them, but they are definitely a lot harder than American, or I don't know much about UK, but they're much harder than the American style schools. So a very strict, rigid schooling system, very honor bound, as they follow something of the Bushido code, and though what we know to be that isn't exactly how most people envision it, it was still a very honorable society. The wizarding world specifically would probably be much more ranked in society.
Like a hierarchy, you mean?
Yes, something similar. Not quite, oh, I'm a king, so I'm better than you, kind of thing. But something more like you're given a rough estimate of somebody's influence by what job they have.
What exactly are you looking to get out of this experience? What are you hoping to achieve or to get out of this experience if you were to participate in this game?
Have a bit of fun, because I've always been a fan of playing a part, and creating a story with everybody else I feel like it's just going to be a blast. So that's probably my main thing. The other thing is, I could do with a bit more socializing. I've become something of a internet hermit in my recent years as I go to college. So mix of those.
Tabletop is a great way to do that. I agree. One final question. In the wizarding world of Harry Potter, besides vampires, what is some aspect of the wizarding world that you're interested in exploring that may not really be touched on a lot from the books and the movies?
The giants. From the little bit that I've read of them, they've nearly gone extinct. They've basically been pushed into this small little area, even smaller to them because they're giants, that consists of 99% of all the living giants left. They don't go to magic schools because they despise magic. They, from my knowledge, haven't been given much characterization other than just big giant people. And just, yeah, I've always, being a very tall person myself, I feel a kinship to them.
Love it.
All right, so I guess then this will be where we branch off into the more the second portion. So understanding that he, of course, is wanting to more break away from the stuff that his family's, darker sides have been experienced with. Unfortunately, one of those elements of his family's occasional wrongdoings in the past has now about to catch up with him. That is being a retired vampire hunter who his name is Matthias Norgren, and his daughter several years ago was killed by a vampire. And upon hearing her screams and running up to her bedroom to investigate. He saw all that he remembered seeing was a hooded figure looming at the bedroom window and seeing a crest upon his cloak that he later learned to belong to the Yamahanta clan, and has since then been very, very vengeful towards anyone belonging to that clan. It would be probably around closer to dawn.
I have one question. Am I alone, or do I say have my friends with me?
I would say alone, that you've just, maybe you had just said goodbye to them and you were heading your separate ways from whatever event was happening.
Heading back to wherever I've been resting my head.
Yeah.
I would probably continue walking down towards wherever it is I'm going. Though, when I feel that somebody's watching me, I would definitely begin to edge farther away from shadows. If I see perhaps like a dark alleyway coming up, I'd do a little skirt around it. Mm-hmm. Make sure that if they want to strike, they have to do it either from a long enough distance that maybe I can react to it, or just or they have to come out in the open and strike me.
Okay. The presence that you could detect as being a figure following behind you, you would then suddenly notice that as you had passed one of those alleyways, now the presence is no longer there. The presence had turned down that other alleyway and was now walking, presumably away from the path that you were walking down. Would that cause you to become more alert, perhaps suspecting something, to lower?
He would definitely. They aren't making themselves known, which means they probably have something less than ideal planned for when I'm not aware, and that would set him on a higher alert. And knowing that he's a vampire, he knows that a lot of people don't like him, so it could be quite a few different people.
All right, which would definitely be good to have that knowledge available readily, because to Matthias, this particular part of the city he had become more familiar with, and he was able to know that such a path would lead him around, and soon much closer than he was before. At this point, he would be within speaking range.
He would turn towards it, walk backwards a little, and say, "I know you're there."
I knew your perception would not betray you. I know too well the strength and the power that your kind has shown.
Perhaps you might also know that not all of us are particularly into fighting people, so you may not want to fight me.
I also know far too well that I am not at all to lower my guard around you or your kind, as your kin has shown to mine.
At the hearing that there's obviously he's had someone close to him, doesn't matter who it was in the past, that got bitten for obviously letting their guard down, we will be like, yeah, some of my people are definitely not friendly.
Then they've not told you, I imagine.
Great, so it was someone in the coven. No. Do you particularly know who?
I know that they belong to one named Yamihanta.
Alright, so it's in the family, no less. Alright. Crap, what do I do here? Listen, I don't know what happened to you, but I can tell you for certain that I've never harmed any person of my own free will. Self-defense, perhaps, but I never aim to do harm.
I'm aware of how these covens function. I know it would not have been as easy a choice to abandon one. How am I to trust that you are not simply lying to me?
I don't know. God, I wish Imogen was here. I can't prove it to you in just words. In my past, I've done my best to avoid anything that could even be construed as this. He will lift his hand up and slowly begin to reach towards his a pocket inside of his robe, and he will say, "I'm going to pull out a flask," and he will pull out a silver marked flask with a symbol of his family. This is all I feed on, a potion. It's got no actual blood in it. It's all just the potion that honestly most of my family has lived off for almost a generation now. And he will begin to get down and slide it over towards where the voice came from. Like, has he actually revealed himself at this point, or is he just talking?
Yeah. It was an older gentleman in the opposite alleyway beside you. He's more in the shadows. He's not like right out in front of you, but he was close enough. So yes, you would have been able to see what direction the voice was coming from, to which you would hear then the sound of the silver clinking off of the floor as he picked it up to examine it.
He would have implicitly dropped it just a little bit into the light, so that if he wanted to reach for it, perhaps he could get a look more towards who he is, see if he could recognize him that way.
It was a raggedy old gloved hand that reached forward, and you could catch a glimpse of a bearded gentleman. This man is definitely well on in years, more so than most vampire hunters that would have probably gone around proclaiming themselves to be the next champion. He's definitely kind of in his more later years, but definitely that could then prove to have more experience to know how to deal with these. After looking over the vial and contemplating the words, then if I am to believe that this clan now lives off of this potion, that the one who sought to harm me was of a rogue element?
Likely, though I cannot say for certain. Many, as you say, many of my kind are a bit two-sided, showing a facade of peaceful coexistence, but not always following through when it counts. In fact, my father used to hunt down such rogue elements.
It's perplexing to think of them of their kind fighting their own, but where would you see yourself then in these multiple-sided parties? Would you see yourself as being on the rogue side or following more of an order?
I definitely see myself on the side of order. It's always been more of a explaining one's own philosophies. Not always as easy as you think. It's been something of a tradition in my family to hunt down those who would break the peace. We have sometimes even supplied armaments to those such as you. Makes it much easier to keep our people from attacking anyone on sight when they know that the repercussions are more than just a slap on the wrist from an outsider or insider.
To this, you would hear a very raspy chuckle from the voice as he starts to let the words sink in a little bit. Maybe it seems things have changed a little bit since I've last taken up this mantle. You'd see the silver vial slide a little bit on the floor, kind of clink a little bit, but then end up at your feet.
He will get on a knee, reach down, pick it up, and dust it off before putting it back in his robe.
This does not change how I feel towards what happened in the past, but know that I will look into this a bit further. If I find out that you have lied to me today, or if I find out that what befell my daughter was not a rogue element, but an organized strike, I will never listen to your words again.
He nods. I think, again, he reaches up this time his other hand and opens up his cloak again, pulls out a quill and a piece of paper, and will write down his address, seal it, and then take a few steps forward, toss it towards the man, and then take a few steps back. Well, you can find me there if you find my words false. You can, if you believe my words at the barest minimum, then you can let me know, and I will do my best to help you.
You're either very foolish or very trusting. Either can be very dangerous, given the life you've chosen. But I appreciate this gesture.
Sometimes someone has to stick their hand out first, even if the risk of getting hit for it is greater.
I'll just keep in mind what was said tonight, and that I'll keep very careful eye over this, gesturing towards the address on the piece of paper, but then the gentleman would leave you be for that night.
Right. Then at that, I believe Norio, feeling that, as trusting as I just was, feel the need to get to my house quicker now. And he will walk down a different alley, wherever closest, and shift into a bat and fly home. Well, we just saw a bit of Norio's character and a bit of mine. I definitely believe, just like vampires in the wizarding world, there is more to be seen, more to be understood, and more to learn in all the things that we can do. We'll have fun times, we'll have some sad times. We will definitely have interesting times. And I would love if you would allow me to be part of this. As Norio can shift into a bat, I would love to shift into a party of people doing interesting things, all around a table, creating a story for your interest, our interest, and whoever else manages to find these videos. With that, that's been my interview, and I hope you all have a good day.